section.
Run. Okay. All right. Welcome, welcome. We are going to talk about your favorite topic today, hormones. I know you're excited about it. I'm excited about it. The only thing, you guys, that I ask is if you have a question during the presentation, I'm going to repeat that question so that the people who are going to be watching the video know what the question is and the answer. So if you see me looking at the camera, that's what we're doing. We're going to cover a whole gamut of information. I'm going to give you a lot of information. I'm also going to have this PowerPoint available for you. I'm going to email it out like I did last week. Did you guys get the one last week? Shake your head, yes, yes. Okay. All right, if you didn't, let me know. Okay, every week I'm just going to email it out so you've got it on hand, and then you can access the internet when we get these videos loaded. So what we're looking at here, guys, more than anything else, is looking at hormones from a health perspective and from a maximizing metabolism perspective, which goes hand in hand. Because as you do this program for health, you will find that your metabolism will go up, you'll feel better, you'll de-age yourself, really, from the inside out. Some of the reasons that we struggle are because as we get older, hormones change, and we don't necessarily change what we're doing as consistently as we need to get to those goals. And sometimes for some of us, you guys, it's subtle things. It's not a lot, but it's subtle things consistently. So as you guys know, muscle dictates metabolism. On average, how many calories per pound per day do we burn? Does anybody know? Except for Sue.
How many calories per day?
How many calories per day per pound of muscle do we burn?
A lot. Say a lot.
A lot. 7 to 10 on average. How about fat per pound per day?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Todd's got it. It's 2 to 3. So 2 to 3 calories per pound per day for fat and 7 to 10 for muscle, which is one of the reasons why we really hammer those strength classes, any type of strength activity, because we know that this is going to help anybody no matter what their goal is. So, as we age, we know that weight gain and health-related issues are due to genetics and gender differences. They're due to muscle mass decreasing, calorie consumption and the quality of the calorie versus expenditure, and then lifestyle. Now I've got this slide, you guys, of all kinds of bullet points of gender differences and the things that we experience, whether we're male or female. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but what I do want to say is this. There are very profound differences between men and women when it comes to hormones. Some of the things we both experience as we age, even though we experience them entirely differently, but they do impact how we feel, how we function, how we move, and what we do moving forward. For example, women burn a higher proportion of fat than men do during exercise, and men burn more fat than women do after exercise. Okay? Men and women have equal levels of progesterone during the first 14 days of a woman's cycle. So those first 14 days of our cycle, we're all pretty happy. Now the last 14 days, things start to shift a little bit. And as women get older, into their 30s and 40s, progesterone and estrogen definitely change. Okay, and those levels of progesterone tend to go down. When progesterone goes down for a woman, it's more difficult for you to hold on to muscle mass because testosterone also decreases. Men have what we call andropause, which is the female version of menopause. You guys have similar things happen hormonally as we age. And I'm saying this because for some people, this starts in our mid-30s. For men and women alike. For some of us, it starts 40s and 50s. So it really does vary from person to person, which is why we try to customize what we're doing here with this program, because when we sit down with you, we chat with you, we want to get an understanding of where you're at, how you're sleeping, how you're moving in class, where you're hurting. All of those things will kind of tell us whether or not you are really able to have the energy that you need from your food, or if you're truly tapped out. And if you're tapped out due to other things, like hormonal changes that are really working against you. So muscle mass goes down with age, body fat goes up with age, metabolic rate goes down due to decrease in muscle mass, frequent dieting, or other poor lifestyle habits. Those are the kinds of things that we can expect to happen if we don't actively do some things about it. And as all of us know, in our 20s, we can do things, right, that we can't necessarily do in our 40s. Is there anybody who's still in their 30s and 40s that can do what they did in their 20s? Raise your hand high. Oh, yeah, right.
Yes, sir.
Turned 30 2 weeks ago.
This is 2 weeks ago.
Doing good.
Okay, so you guys hear me talk about calorie consumption versus quality of the calorie all the time. Our calories are important. They're very important. determine what we're going to weigh, how we're going to function. But the quality of the calorie is just as important as the calorie itself. So if you're putting in 1,600 solid calories a day of proteins and vegetables and fruits and foods that are going to fuel you, not only here but outside of your workplace, you are going to feel great, you're going to have more energy, and you're going to burn fat. If you're putting in 1,600 calories a day of whatever you want, you won't, especially as you get older. If you're in your 20s, you can kind of get away with it, depending on your genetics. But as we get into our 30s and 40s and 50s, it definitely gets more challenging. We really aren't that mean. We're just trying to get you to eat the right things. I know sometimes it feels like she tells me to eat a vegetable one more time. It's for a reason, you guys. These hormones definitely play into it. So from a lifestyle perspective, we've got physical, chemical, mental, nutritional, and thermal stress. Those are all of the kinds of stresses that every single one of us in this room is experiencing on a daily basis. And we need to figure out what we need to put into our bodies to manage what comes up in terms of stress and how it affects everybody else. You guys hear me talk about the stress hormone cortisol all the time. And there's a reason for it. It plays a very fundamental role not only in your energy levels, but in your overall health. Cortisol levels really can indicate how you're going to function not only now, but 10 to 20 to 30 years from now. And I take this very, very seriously, guys, because I see people all the time. My brother-in-law is one of these people who, healthy and moving and, has a very high-stress job. I saw him this weekend. He was complaining about heartburn. 2 days later, he had a heart attack. Okay? Cortisol played a role in that because of his stress levels. So it's something that you really need to assess as you move forward, not only in this program, but in between programs. When cortisol increases, adrenaline increases. So we know we get that feeling when you get kind of tense, maybe you have a lot of energy going up, maybe you have to be on your toes, and all of a sudden you feel that gut reaction. Cortisol also increases when insulin increases, and insulin increases when we're eating foods that are going to give us a burst of energy. It can be anything from an apple all the way up to a candy bar. Insulin is going to increase. So if you have chronic levels of elevated cortisol in the bloodstream already, and then you eat foods that are going to cause that insulin to rise even higher, your cortisol level is going to go up even higher. And when your cortisol levels are chronically elevated, when you go into that workout room, guess what you're going to burn? Muscle, not fat. So chronically elevated levels of cortisol are going to not make it possible for you to get into those fat stores. Those fat stores are going to hold on like this when you're under stress. Where does cortisol encourage our fat deposits to accumulate? Right there, belly. Somewhat as a protective mechanism because our organs are here, but also because from a hormonal perspective, a lot of what happens in our bodies hormonally happens in this area. We'll talk a little bit about glucagon, which is a hormone that is stored and used in the liver. And whenever there are organs under stress, cortisol says, hang on to belly fat, hang on to body fat. We may need to protect this area. Cortisol depletes levels of serotonin. So we all want elevated levels of serotonin. And one of the number one things that you can do to elevate that level is to sleep. It's just to sleep. And I know a lot of people struggle with this at some point in their life. But if you're not sleeping, if you're sleeping in like 4-hour chunks and you wake up and you're out for a couple hours and you go back to sleep, the ability to function the next day, the ability to do what you need to do, and you can see some smiles here, the ability to make the right choices with food and with alcohol, it makes it difficult. It really does. So I always say to people, if you can get your sleep under control, we can definitely help you get to the next level. And then cortisol also weakens your immune system, which means that with all of the things that you guys are doing here as a company, you're flying here, things are really moving at a fast pace, and all the things that you're doing in your personal life, and then really working hard in that fitness room and changing your body, and then if you have that elevated level of cortisol there and you're not feeding yourself the right foods, you're going to get sick, and or you're going to end up with an injury that won't heal. And that cortisol is going to make it very, very difficult for that injury to heal. It's going to make it much harder for your body to do what you want it to do. Cortisol levels should be high in the morning and low at night. And honestly, most of us function the opposite of that. A lot of us end up having low levels of cortisol in the morning and high levels at night. So to flip-flop that cortisol, one of the best things you can do is start your day with breakfast. Yes. What can we eat for breakfast? What do you guys like to eat? Just throw it at me. Eggs, good. Oatmeal, love it. Banana.
Turkey and cheese sandwich.
Turkey and cheese sandwich. Smoothies, right? I mean, whatever, right? But eating breakfast is very, very important to get those cortisol levels elevated in order to get your body functioning the way you want to. Now, what happens at night if we eat all kinds of stuff that throws us off? Like big plate of pasta, and a bowl of ice cream, and then a bowl of cereal. I know none of us do that, right? I know I do. Last night I was so hungry. I had a big plate of pasta, and I'm like, I really want ice cream, but I knew that I'd throw everything off and I wouldn't sleep well. In order for cortisol to fall at night, you have to get your body into more of a rest mode. And the only way to do that is to really listen to it and to feed it what it needs for the task at hand. What do we have to do at night? Sleep! So it's really nice to kind of wind your day down with something that's soothing, small, stress-free. You know what I mean? Sue and I always say, breakfast for dinner is perfect. Don't stress out. Do something that is going to allow your body to rest and not have to work as hard on digestion. From a lifestyle perspective, sleep is going to be, again, one of your biggest parallels in this program. Physical performance, you guys, is going to increase with adequate rest and sleep. And I know it's not just that it's going to increase. You're going to feel the difference in your body when you're in those classes. When you sleep well, right? Have you guys ever had a night's sleep where you're not sleeping well and you try to go bust it in class or do a ride it just doesn't happen. The other thing that happens with sleep, you guys, is muscle repair happens when we sleep. And it happens at a great pace. In fact, for younger people, I look at my kids who are preteen and teens, and then I look at clients that I have in my 20s. Their recovery rate is like this at night. They get up and they're ready to go, and then they can do 2, 3, 4 hours of sports because they're younger, their hormones are on their side. But if we don't have those muscle growth hormones at work, like testosterone and human growth hormone, which can only regenerate at night, those are the only 2 hormones that regenerate at night, you guys. If we don't have those working in our favor, it makes it very, very difficult for us to perform physically. Okay, again, you guys are going to get this, and I apologize we don't have it up, but people who tend to store fat and people who tend to struggle with losing body fat have low levels of glucogen. And glucogen is that hormone that is stored in the liver, okay? So anytime your liver is taxed, what happens to glucogen? It barely functions at all, okay? It's either non-existent or it's really, really high. So the liver is responsible for a lot of what we do with our body fat. So if you have a diet that's higher in sugar, if you have a couple drinks every night that are stressing the liver out, if you are eating foods that have a lot of hormones in them, a lot of preservatives, a lot of additives, a lot of color, that hormone glucogen isn't going to be at the level it needs to be at. It's going to be way up here or non-existent. A fat storer is going to have very low levels of glucogen all of the time. Cortisol is going to be really high for people who store fat. Human growth hormone is going to be really low for people who store fat. And HGH, you guys, is something that we all have present in our bodies, and then as we age, it gently decreases, and then we get to 40 and we get a big dip, and then it kind of levels out as we get older. Human growth hormone can be stimulated to be at a higher level if we're engaging in strength training activities on a regular basis, in addition to eating enough protein in our diet. Fat stores have high levels of insulin, and they also have high levels of leptin, okay? So you guys want to get into the fat burning mode. And the thing is, this is not just as easy as saying, I want to take my cortisol levels down. Hormones work synergistically, and this is where it gets kind of tricky, but this whole program works with those things in mind. The fat burner is going to have high levels of glucogen all of the time. All of the time. It's about consistency with glucogen. You're going to have cortisol levels low most of the time. You're going to have HGH levels high. You're going to have insulin levels low, and you're going to have leptin levels low. So a lot of us are in between these two, fat stores and fat burners. And there's little things that we can do to make a difference in these hormones. For example, glucogen. Think about glucogen as the opposite of insulin in terms of what its function is in the body. It helps to burn fat, okay? Insulin helps to store fat. So those babies need insulin. They need more insulin than we do, all right? Glucogen works in the liver to regulate sugar and fat usage. So here's the deal. If you are somebody that you know you rely on that 3 o'clock, whatever, candy bar or, I don't know, give me some foods. Just chips, bad food, junk food, things that, fast food, whatever it may be. Where you're that person that relies on the alcohol at night to go to bed, to get to sleep, those glucogen levels are not going to ever be here. They're always going to be down here. And that liver is going to have to work twice as hard. When your organs are working harder, what gets the back seat? Muscles. They don't get to function like you want them to function. So we need to get those organs working the way that you want them to work. One particular food, there's a lot of foods that help glucogen to raise it up, but there's one food that really helps to stimulate it. Anybody know? Protein. Protein stimulates glucogen. So if you're somebody that's trying to get away from the sugar, away from the salt, away from the processed food, and you're trying to get your body to function better because you know that you're probably too heavy on those things, you're going to want to bump up your protein. And that's why, take advantage, you guys, of the B4C meals that they have here, not only for lunch, for dinner, the salad bar. The scale, I believe, is still on the end of that salad bar. And you guys have scales at home? Measure. I've had several people say that they bought a food scale that makes a big difference. You think you're getting enough protein, but here's something that'll help. If you eat lunch and within a half hour you're hungry, you probably didn't have enough protein or fiber. So measure that protein and make sure that you're getting women 3 to 5 ounces a meal, men 5 to 7 ounces per meal. So cortisol works synergistically with other hormones. In the presence of high insulin, low testosterone, and limited human growth hormone, what's going to happen is whatever you eat is going to go into fat storage. So that means even if you're coming in here and you're eating an apple and a piece of chicken, if you've got high levels of stress, that cortisol is going to make it much more likely for that food to be packed away in fat storage than to be used for energy. And you'll notice things like when you exercise, you'll be fatigued a lot quicker. You won't feel as able to do the exercises as you normally would. You'll feel really tired at night. You might wake up in the middle of the night. Those are some indicators that cortisol levels are off. When cortisol is released with higher levels of human growth hormone and testosterone, it does the opposite. So again, synergistically, so if you are engaging in strength training activities on a regular basis, you do have protein in your diet on a regular basis, what you're going to notice is that the cortisol is going to work with you so that when you do have that apple and that piece of chicken, that it's going to be able to be used for energy and not stored as fat. This is one of the reasons why we get so picky with the food, because we know a lot of us really struggle even with the best of foods. If you're somebody that has inflammation, you'll know it because your rings will be tight, you'll see puffiness in your face when you wake up in the morning, you won't sleep well, you'll have an injury that's not healing, you won't be able to respond the way that you normally want to respond in life. You'll know your stress levels are elevated, and you'll also know that it's going to be much more difficult for you to eat the food that everybody else is eating and use it for energy, right? Your body will switch over into using food for energy if you treat it well. But we really have to treat it well. We have to listen to what's going on. So testosterone and human growth hormone, you guys, are the building and the burning hormones, and they work synergistically with cortisol and adrenaline to burn fat instead of store it. So that testosterone and that human growth hormone are so very important. So not only protein and strength training, but some of the other things that are going to help you elicit a stronger testosterone and HGH response are eating foods that don't have as much in them in terms of additives and preservatives. The smaller the ingredient list, the greater the likelihood of the testosterone or HGH response. I guarantee it. And I know there are people in here that have experienced that, where you guys start eating more real food, more whole food, and you're getting away from more processed food, and all of a sudden you're seeing your body change. That muscle growth is happening. That body fat is coming down. Think about it this way. If you have high levels of insulin in your body, what I mean by that is you're eating foods that cause your insulin to rise rapidly more often, this is what your fat cells do. They lock. And they hold on. And depending on genetically where you hang on to it, belly, hips, legs, wherever it may be, to get that block off those fat cells is going to be like taking a hammer to a lock on a door when you first begin, which is kind of what we do the first couple weeks of this program. We kind of take a hammer to our bodies, don't we? We clean the pantries out, we get into the fitness room and we work really, really hard, maybe differently than we have in a long time. We change our schedules a little bit, we change our sleep. So we're busting open that lock because those insulin levels are here, we want to bring them down here. And we not only want to bring them down here, but we want to keep them here. So that in between programs, you're not, woo, again, right? And then you come back and you're like, ow. And the reason you're saying ow, is because your muscles are not working the way that they should be working. And when you're in that fitness room, your muscles are literally, the body's saying, okay, that your fat cells are got a lock on them. I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to grab from your muscles instead. Leptin. Leptin is our hunger hormone. It is a very important hormone for people that struggle with weight and have struggled with weight all of their lives and really do a lot of the right things but don't know what's happening. I always encourage them to go to a naturopath. Some medical doctors at UW Sports Medicine do this and do a hormone panel where you can get leptin, ghrelin, cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, all of those levels tested, okay? Because then you'll have a tangible way of knowing what's working and what's not. What leptin does is it basically signals to you, I'm hungry, you should eat now. So a lot of us, like I know I do, I get up in the morning, I'm hungry in the morning, but I wasn't always hungry in the morning. When I was eating poorly and I was a Diet Coke drinker and I was bagels for breakfast, I didn't really realize when I was hungry and when I wasn't, which is why when people say to us, I'm not hungry in the morning, do I have to eat breakfast? You will be hungry. We promise you that you will be hungry. It'll take some time to chew. What's happening for you if you're not hungry in the morning is you are probably experiencing leptin resistance. Your leptin levels are probably so out of whack that you no longer can know when you're hungry and when you're not hungry. So once we get you eating at regular times, we can reset that leptin clock. And that will help you indicate when you're hungry and when to eat. The other thing about leptin, real quick, you guys, is that leptin resistance causes you to eat more and not feel full. So this is a big one too. I know I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday that said I can eat a full dinner and then I go right to the carbohydrates and I do not feel full until it's too late and then all of a sudden I'm way full, and that's leptin resistance. It can be changed. All right, so real quick. Food that increases blood sugar rapidly. You name it, most processed food, bagels, most cereals, chips, cookies, white rice, white bread. For some of us, even the brown stuff will increase insulin very, very fast. This is where we have these conversations and check-in so we can kind of determine what's happening for you. But when insulin goes up fast, what has to happen is cortisol has to come in to stabilize blood sugar because high levels of insulin in the body are dangerous, okay? So cortisol comes in to stabilize blood sugar. If we're under a lot of stress, and we already have a lot of cortisol floating around in that body, and we need cortisol to stabilize insulin, but we're under a lot of stress, so cortisol's not responding, that's when we end up in a pre-diabetic state. And that's when we end up not feeling well and actually not seeing any changes in our body whatsoever. And that's when we know we have to really clean up. That's why sometimes we ask you guys to get really picky about your food. Because if you're not seeing results, it's probably because your hormones are so off that we need to get you eating as healthy and clean as possible to get those hormones to respond. So the fat storer has low adrenal reserves. The fat burner has high adrenal reserves. One of the ways that you'll notice this is your stress response. If you're somebody that tends to be more of a fat burner, you'll feel the stress response, that elevated feeling in the body when you're fight or flight, that type of thing. It'll come, you'll be able to act, and then it'll go away. If you're a fat storer, that stress response will hover, and you'll feel kind of sick for a while, and you won't really know how to bring it down. A fat storer has high leptin, high estrogen, and high cortisol, and a fat burner has the opposite. High levels of estrogen are something that can get in our way as we get older. Okay, we want to try to balance estrogen. This is where it gets tricky for us women. Is the best thing that you can do to balance out estrogen and progesterone is to eat foods that are as clean as possible. Doesn't mean you have to be organic. Doesn't mean you have to buy really expensive stuff. It just means that you have to make decisions to maybe visit a local farm and buy your meat there. Maybe go to Trader Joe's and get frozen bags of vegetables. Things like that will make a big difference for you when it comes to being able to store fat or burn it. Lack of too much or the wrong kind of exercise will equal a loss of muscle. Okay, so for some people who maybe are really, really into the cardiovascular component of fitness, but that's all they're doing, they're also going to lose a lot of muscle. Now, if that's where they're going and that's their goal, that's okay. But long term, it's going to be tough to balance that out as you get older. You need to have some strength training in there to balance it out. The lower your muscle mass, the lower response that you have to your hormones. So people who have really, really low muscle are less likely to have the response that they want to the hormones compared to the people with higher muscle mass. 50% of our plate should be what?
Vegetables.
And fruit, a little bit of fruit, right? 30% protein. And I know there are people in here that don't necessarily eat meat. Tell me, what are the other sources of protein that you guys like to eat? Tofu, eggs, beans, right? Nuts, lentils, cheese, and what else? Tell me.
I like
Peanut butter? And then 20% should be those low glycemic index foods. Things that you guys see on the list, things that we talked about. The brown rice, half cup. The pasta, half cup. You might be somebody that likes oatmeal. Just make sure you're measuring these things. Those low glycemic index foods are going to give you the energy that you need for your life, but they're also going to allow you to stabilize your blood sugar so you have more control over your hormones. Protein recommendations, you guys, just generally, on average, for women are about 15 to 20 grams with each meal, okay? For men, 20 to 30. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. You can eat a lot of protein and still do okay for the most part. It's one of those foods that you really don't have to worry about a whole lot. In fact, in the morning, you know how sometimes you're craving carbohydrates? Well, what happens is if those cortisol levels aren't where they need to be, then we want the pie in the morning, remember? So if those cortisol levels are real low like that, one of the best things that you can do to elevate cortisol is to have a little bit of carbohydrate. But you mix it with the protein, and that'll give you the stabilization in the blood sugar, which will trigger insulin to come down in the body, which will also trigger cortisol to come down, which will trigger you to burn fat in the fitness classes instead of muscle. Physical activity, you guys you want to move 6 days a week, weight training 3 times a week, some type of functional training with weights, flexibility, conditioning. Who's doing it?
Who's doing what?
Yoga, flexibility.
Can't get into it.
All right, you guys want to do that at least 10 minutes a day.
Adding another one.
Okay, at least.
Keep busy.
Do you guys enjoy it? I know some people are like, yes. Okay, do it. Do it because that's the other thing that's going to help your cortisol levels to come down. It's going to help your glucogen levels to be where they need to be in the liver. It's going to help you burn fat and not muscle. I have these great pictures, but I can't.
Hey, Hal, you have that. You can send it, right?
Yes.
You can send it. So
Yeah.
we'll get that in your guys' inboxes.
And so I'll send this out to you guys because it's a lot of information. There's a lot more information on here than I talked about today. But I guess the primary thing to really think about when it comes to overall hormones and what you guys are trying to accomplish is where are you personally? Where are you personally? I mean, take an inventory. Like, what's your sleep like? And really be detailed about it. Are you sleeping well? If you're not, what are the things that you can change? What's your stress level like, honestly? And what are you willing to change to make those goals happen? What's your fitness level like? And where do you want to get? And how are you feeling? You know, if you're hurting, I mean, and I'm not just talking muscle fatigue, but I'm talking like pain that doesn't go away hurting. That means that you're not putting enough of the right stuff in, and you're not regenerating your body the way that you need to regenerate it. And from a food perspective, we can definitely help you. There are going to